LaQuincey Reed, and I'm here with Gayle Curry. Gayle is an encaustic artist and also a past artist in residence here at the Skirvin. So, Gayle, go ahead and give an introduction about yourself better than I did.
Okay. Yes, I am definitely an encaustic artist. I've been doing it for about 13 years. I got fascinated with it. I saw a piece in Sedona, Arizona, and decided I had to figure out how they were doing that. It was just amazingly gorgeous. And so then I became obsessed with the medium and started finding out everything I could. But before that, I was also acrylic, oil. I've been doing art since I was 5 years old, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I found that encaustics was my passion, and that's what I have really come to love.
Okay. So you said you were making art since you were 5 years old.
Yeah.
Is that really what you've been doing concurrently with everything else in life, or have you been doing that like after you graduated high school? You've been doing art as like your gig.
Well, I wish it was my gig. When I say since I was 5 years old, I started off with crayons, and now I think it's kind of ironic that I've ended up with crayons.
Mm-hmm.
So, just always involved in the arts, always learning new stuff. I probably didn't really start becoming more of a professional artist until I was in my late 30s, and really started pursuing working classes, showing, and finding new opportunities.
Mm-hmm. So, kind of with encaustic is an old art form and everything like that. It's been around since, from my understanding, like ancient Egypt, that type of deal. So a lot of that stuff is more grounded in realism.
Yes.
Yours is more grounded in abstract expressionism, if I'm correct.
Yes, exactly. You've got that right.
So my question is, do you ever dabble into that side of doing things more representational, or are you strictly doing things that are abstract?
I probably work primarily in abstract now, but when I started as an artist, I was definitely more realistic, and I really wanted to loosen up and not paint so realistically. I kind of got bored with that and wanted to expand on it. Encaustic lent itself to letting the medium decide where you were going, and I really was enthralled with that I would try to control it, and then it would not do what I want. But once I let go and go, okay, well, this is what it's telling me, and then I would follow it, I came up with some beautiful pieces, and that I started falling in love with, and I found I had this relationship with molten wax that made a difference.
Ideas is there still some kind of basis in reality where you're looking at something and you're saying, I want to feel like, it's a nice bright sunny day, or do you, like, how do you generate ideas?
Well, usually what I have found in the past is that there are things that inspire me, and I like to do a lot of reading, and I like to look into philosophy. And one of my first projects was the Tao Te Ching. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's an ancient Chinese text that has 81 verses, kind of like poems. And what I did is I read that over a year and kind of lived the Tao, is what it's called. And then I decided that I wanted to paint the Tao. So I did 81 paintings, one for each verse of the Tao. And so that was kind of one of my inspirations. Another inspiration I did, my mom got really sick with leukemia. And it obviously kind of consumed our lives there for a while. So I decided I got fascinated with the cells of leukemia. They're actually quite beautiful. They're not just leukemia, but cancer cells. So I created this show called The Unknown Origins, and it was about cancer cells. My mom and both my dad had been diagnosed with cancer, dad with pancreatic and mom leukemia. And I was so surprised to find how many people, relatives and friends, that had cancer. And, it's kind of like living your life. I wanted to incorporate the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there was some things that are very beautiful about cancer cells. And then, obviously there's the ugly side of losing someone and the sickness and everything. But what ended up happening was, my mother was an inspiration. She ended up coming to the show. People were very inspired. that we had these survivors and these fighters, and that's kind of how I categorized it, and then people that had passed on. And it was really, really moving and very uplifting for a show about something so dark.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears a little bit
Sure.
and talk to you about Studio 6, if that's okay.
Sure.
You're one of the founding members.
I'm
no?
not one of the founding members.
Okay.
There were 6 founding members in 1984.
Okay.
And I have just been part of Studio 6 for the last 2 years.
Okay, I thought you'd been there longer.
Well, it's because I'm a groupie and I hang out there all the time. I've been
Okay.
hanging out there for like 10 years because my best friends are there.
Okay.
But I had a studio, In Your Eye studio, for about 10 years in the middle of Paseo. It's right next to Picasso's. And then I had Paseo School of Art over by the Red Rooster, where I taught classes and workshops.
Okay.
And then about right before the pandemic, I decided because I was dealing with my parents' illness, closed the shop and just kind of went to, working as a full-time artist.
Okay. So, like I said, this is kind of why I was going to ask, because I know you've been doing a lot of different things, not just your art. You've been kind of dabbling in a lot of different things in terms of art. So, can we shift gears again?
Of course.
So, when you were here at the Skirvin, how does that compare to having the Studio 6? Is it different? Like, how does, because they have the first Friday and people kind of walk in and everything like that. How do they compare and how are they different?
Well, one of the things I loved about the Skirvin was it gave me, basically a 6 to 8 hour day of creating. I didn't have a second job. I had second jobs, but I worked it after the hours. So it was all about the creation and about expanding my work and improving it. I also loved the Skirvin was different in that I had people coming through all the time. And one of my reasons for getting in and being able to be the artist was I was interacting with people and letting them create encaustic monotypes, which is basically melting wax on a hot plate and pulling paper prints. And that became such a great joy to watch. I mean, I had children as young as 4 and 5 to people in their 90s coming in and create and have a great time. And so that was such a joy, and that I was interacting and meeting people, and then just having this great atmosphere. The studio is wonderful, but we don't have as much traffic.
Yeah.
It is just a little quieter.
Okay. So did you learn a whole lot when you were in here? Did you learn how to, I guess, tell me what you learned while you were here.
Learning to interact with the public, and learning, obviously setting your schedule and getting things set and done, and then so many things. I had already been learning how I knew how to put on shows and have openings and all of that stuff, but it was just on a bigger, wider level, and meeting some fabulous people and making connections and getting new opportunities from that was one of the wonderful things that I learned.
So one more question about Studio 6 and Skirvin. Marissa Ragland is also there with you.
Yes.
Did you encourage her
Yes.
to? You did?
Yes. Yeah, she talked to me before she was applying, but yes, I thought she would be an amazing fit, and she is an amazing artist, and I feel so lucky that I'm now one of her gallery mates at the Studio 6. But yes, we've even talked about, we thought we secretly kind of want to apply and come in together again someday as a duo to the Skirvin, but don't know if that's possible or not.
Yeah, so you encouraged an artist to apply for here. I've been talking to other people and I'm saying, hey, if you feel like you want to do it, if you feel like you have the time to do it, if you feel like you're at that point, don't question it, just go ahead and do it and
Just
apply.
do it.
So what advice would you give to somebody that's wanting to apply and be here?
Be very prepared. I applied several times before I got the gig.
Yeah.
But practice your presentation. Have a really thought out plan of what you're going to do. I think with the Skirvin, you really want to have that interactive community aspect of it if you can. I don't know how some of the other artists have done, but for that worked out really well for me because it just seemed like, had a lot of engagement, and I had a great time.
Okay, well, good deal. So you have your donated piece upstairs.
Yes.
It's an encaustic as well.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and take everything down. You can go up and we'll talk about that. Does that sound good?
Sounds awesome.
All right, let's go ahead and do that.
Thank you.
All right. So we're upstairs here at the Skirvin, and we're with Gayle's piece called Red Met Yellow. And it's another encaustic piece. That's what you do.
Yes.
So, go ahead and talk to us about your piece.
Okay. Well, one of the things I love about encaustic is obviously you're working with something molten and you're getting to work with fire. And even though it doesn't probably look it, there's a lot of layers in this. I mean, there's probably 20, 25 layers of wax. And you can use each layer of wax together in order for the piece to stay together or it would come off. But then I also like, you can see I have a lot of movement going on here, and I love slinging paint. And I love getting that energy and that dynamic. And then just kind of finishing it off with, my torch and coming up with these huge, obviously vibrant colors. I love vibrant colors.
So I kind of almost get like a landscape kind of feel to
Yeah.
it. It reads almost like mountains and water and sky, but those elements aren't there. And then the colors that you think of when you think
Right.
of water, sky, and mountain and everything. Compositionally, how did you approach this? Did you approach it kind of like thinking like it almost feels like I want to do like a landscape, or how did you approach it?
What I do a lot of the times is I let the painting lead me. I like to lay out some colors and start letting it lead me into the direction. A lot of mine do have that landscape feel, and I do love landscapes and in that color. But I also like to use unusual colors in it. Sometimes I try to follow basic composition rules usually when I'm working, so I don't, like a T or the different ones that you can use. So I don't know. Just again, it's all kind of more intuitive.
So I've been looking, and we can see, I guess, the different layers.
I know you're not supposed to touch art, but I'll let you.
But yeah, I can see the different layers here.
Right.
Throughout, kind of peeking through, and it's almost like the Renaissance paintings where they would glaze, and you can see a little bit of those finer layers and things like that. So I guess the question I have for you is, how do you determine what to glaze and what to keep? Does something just kind of have to speak to you compositionally, or how do you approach that?
Well, I do a lot of layering, and I will also do a lot of scraping back. So I like when things are just peeking through and stuff. Compositional, I always love to have some calm areas, which you can see as the yellow and the reds are calm, even though if you look pretty deep, there's a lot of busyness behind it. And then having that opposite of busyness that, I don't know, that makes a painting pop. So.
Yeah, another thing I really noticed is like we talked about the landscape. The mountains get further away, they fade. We've kind of got that going on around there. Very nice.
There's a lot of depth in there. You'd be surprised at what colors are underneath there. It's not all red. It started out probably as opposite colors.
So whenever you do these flatter areas, kind of walk me through this process. And then I'm assuming that with these lumpier, more beaded areas, you're just kind of dropping the wax. But go ahead and talk to me about your technique in terms of that.
Okay. So when you begin an encaustic, you have to heat up the whole board. The board has to be evenly hot. And then you lay I usually have a brush for these bigger ones that are about this wide, and I lay down a base layer of wax. That's usually always clear. And I'll build up 4 layers before I even begin using colors. And then I'll start laying in the different colors and the depths, and then I might take a clay tool and start scraping back the wax and revealing these other things and smoothing it out. And then when I feel like that's set and ready to go and kind of interesting, I actually just fill my brush up and sling it. I mean, it's a mess. I have wax everywhere. So it's really kind of like more like Pollock throwing paint. And I love that technique, and a lot of dripping and splattering. And then the torch, Where these areas you use a heavy torch where it's heated up, these you use a lighter touch because you don't want the wax to melt and sink in because it will all even out if you use too much heat.
Yeah. Ever burn yourself?
Many times.
I bet you
poured
get that
wax.
question,
Yeah, I poured wax on myself and I caught my hair on fire. So.
That's not good. Well, were you lying at the time?
Lying? Yes. No.
So is there anything else you'd like to tell us about this piece?
It's just, I think it's an essence of me. I think color is what I love and what comes out and makes me the happiest. So usually when my pieces are this colorful, it brings joy to me. And that's my main purpose for painting is joy and peace and finding my happiness.
So why don't you go ahead and give us your email or your social media and your website and all that stuff.
My website is GayleCurry.com, GayleCurry.com, and then Facebook is Gayle Curry Art. Instagram is Gayle L. Curry.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you so much for visiting with me, and I'm sure I'll see you around.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.